Welcome to Fearless with Jason Whitlock. I am Jason Whitlock, your host. Happy Wednesday to you and yours. Buckle up. We have a tremendous show today. We have a fire starter that I'm about to deliver that will start a fire. Hopefully, I don't burn my own self down in starting this fire, but I'm going to light it, and we'll just see where it goes. We're going to address at the beginning of the show, first hour and 15 minutes of the show, we're going to address the events in the political space. We'll hyper focus in on what transpired in New York because I think that is most relevant as it relates to the mayoral race and Zohran Mamdani winning. We'll hyper focus on that. I think some of the other things that have happened in Virginia and other places are less significant. They're traditional, hardcore blue states that elected blue people, and it's not that New York isn't a blue state, but we've seen in New York City, we've seen, from Giuliani to others, Republicans represented there, and I don't even want to turn this into a Republican versus Democrat deal. What has transpired in New York, the front porch of America. I think that is accurate to call New York City the front porch of America. It has fallen. It's fallen to a socialist Muslim, and this has deep implications that I think I'm going to try to address here today. I've watched and tried to observe some of the conversation about what transpired last night in these elections, and I think I have a pretty good take that's consistent with what we've been talking about on this show for a long time. In the second half of the show, or the back half of the show, I recorded an interview yesterday with Danny Kanell that we will air, and it's a very good conversation focused in a little bit on Dion and college football and parenting and all that. We'll play that at the back end of the show. I'm hoping that I will be disciplined here, and we'll get a reaction from my fire starter from Anthony, Virgil, and Shemeka today, and that's as long as I'm disciplined and concise. But again, I'm about to somewhat emote, and I don't know, how long I'll emote. I don't know where the conversation's going to fully go. I have the thoughts in my mind. I have some notes in front of me, but I have a reaction to last night's election results. And so I want to remind you all, if you're listening over Apple, please hit that 5-star rating. I believe the show is worthy, and it's one of the easy ways for you to support the show. The other thing I want you to do is, like me, thank our sponsor today, Relief Factor. Relief Factor is a 100% drug-free daily supplement that fights inflammation. Inflammation is the source. Inflammation is the source of those aches and pains that are compromising your life, stopping you from being as active as you would like to be, making you think, well, I'm just 60 and I'm too old, or I'm 64 and I'm too old, or I'm 70 and I'm too old. No, you're not. You're not engaging in the fight, the inflammation fight, and I've got a great tool for you to use, and it's Relief Factor. 100% drug-free. Take it daily. It fights inflammation. They have a quick start program, a 3-week quick start that only costs you $20. $20 to find out if Relief Factor is a solution or helps you fight inflammation. It's just $20. 70% of the people that try the 3-week quick start circle back and re-up because they're experiencing the benefits of Relief Factor. It's something that's part of my routine. It's something I've shared with you all. Jeffrey Steele, my great friend in the country music industry, and how this guy is 64 years old and he bikes 30 miles every morning and he takes Relief Factor. You should too. 2 ways to get it. Call 1-800-4RELIEF. That's 1-800, the number 4-RELIEF. Or visit relieffactor.com. I just while I'm on the topic and making sure that I don't have to stop down and emote at it. I don't want to stop from emoting. I want to remind you also, and trust me, this fire start is worth it. Be patient with me. I want to remind you also that here at The Blaze, we put out something called Frontier Magazine. It's quarterly. The issue number 4 is coming out now. That you need to be a Blaze Unlimited subscriber, and you'll get Frontier Magazine and everything we do here at The Blaze. You can get $40 off your subscription right now. When you own Frontier, you own something that can't be buried in the algorithm. You can pass it to a friend. This is like a hardcover coffee table magazine that is fantastic, and it's our VIP treatment. Blaze Unlimited is more than just your ticket to Frontier. You get early access to exclusive events, VIP treatment, members only content, and a premium experience built for people who want to take their membership deeper. This isn't just about reading the truth, it's about owning it. Go to blazeunlimited.com/fearless right now. Lock in your subscription before we sell out again. The first 50 subscribers who use the promo code Frontier40 will get $40 off and receive a special bonus digital access to Frontier issues 1, 2, and 3, so you can complete the story from the start. That's blazeunlimited.com/fearless, promo code Frontier40. Boom. All right, let's get into it. I don't think, and this has probably been true for 6 to 8 years. I'll never go to New York City ever again. I don't believe New York is safe. I don't believe it's reflective of the America that I fell in love with, or the New York City that I fell in love with. I used to go to New York City all the time. I used to do the TV show The Sports Reporters for ESPN, and would go to New York City and would love it, enjoy it, would love walking all over New York City. Just going to New York was a treat. It is no longer a treat. New York has fallen. A socialist Muslim is the mayor of New York City. Sitting here in 2025 and saying that after the events in 2001. And that's not me just, saying, hey, Muslims are bad and they did 9/11, because I believe that's a group effort. And, call me a conspiracy theorist, call me a nut job, call me whatever you want. But that was a group effort. Osama bin Laden and all them people, they had help. But to sit here 24 years later and a socialist, communist Muslim is the mayor of New York City. We have a problem in America. And this reminds me, years ago, this is around 2008, 2009, I visited London for the first time. And I had this picture of what I thought London was. And I visited and started getting around the city and the whole deal. And I was like, man, this is nothing like I thought. This is, what I expected. It's like, man, there's a lot of Muslims. And, called me a racist, called me whatever, called me intolerant. But I was like, man, this isn't what I thought London was. And I just, I remember coming back and being like, London's okay, but, I don't know how many more times I'll go. And I turned back around in 2012 because the Olympics were there. And the Olympics were a completely different experience. The whole world descends on the Olympic host or whatever. And so that was a whole different, more dressed up, cleaned up, London putting its best face on. But I've never had, after going to the Olympics, I did go back one other time. I went back for a speaking engagement. I forget the group that flew me out there to do a speaking engagement. So I've been to London 3 times, but I've never since returned on my dime. No interest. And now to look at America and look at New York City, it reminds me of London. We've been overtaken. And if I went, and I'm going to go super big picture, like, hey, what happened to America's front porch? What has happened to American politics? What has happened to voters here in America that where a socialist, communist, Muslim, Marxist could be elected to arguably the most important city in America, certainly in the top 2 or 3. How did it become just like London? How did we get overrun with people that don't share American values, Christian values? How did someone named Zohran Mamdani become mayor of New York? And obviously, there's a long road that we got here, and that Barack Hussein Obama being elected president helped us get here. But long even before that, we've been on this path. The uprooting of American values, the uprooting of Christianity. And so you have to connect it all to, hey, when they remove Bibles out of schools, when they legalized abortion, when they legalized same-sex marriage, we've been on a long path. And everybody right now wants to look immediately at, well, let's blame this person, let's blame that person, and if Trump were on the ticket and all these other things, and I'm like, no. This is a rejection of Jesus Christ that has been going on for a solid 60, 65 years in America. And I'm talking about people backslide, people have a little slow drifting away. They get comfortable. They start believing in themselves. But as a country, we have just rejected Jesus Christ. And I'm talking about all of us. And you can sit there, oh, it's the left, it's the left. No, it's all of us. We've all been riding the slippery slope straight to hell. And if it's reflected in our politicians, they are a reflection of us en masse. And the reason why I got Don't Look Up, and if you remember the movie Don't Look Up, it was a Netflix movie, and it was about global warming, and it was some kind of analogy to global warming. They're telling you not to look up. But that's basically what we've told all politicians and political people. Don't look up. Don't look to Jesus Christ for guidance. Compromise on everything. Every single thing. Compromise. And so people right now, there's been people that are like, hey, this Nick Fuentes and Candace Owens, it's that form of politics and conversation that has turned people off the Republican Party. And I say no. And that's not a defense of either Candace or Nick Fuentes, and I don't have a problem defending Candace. Obviously, I have criticisms of Nick Fuentes that I've talked about extensively. But to sit here and to blame them and that style of politics, when it's actually those of us that are Christian that have been afraid to stand in the public square and stand on our Christian biblical worldview. We've compromised at every turn. And we have softened the hard message of Christianity at every turn. And the Democrats have leaned into what they believe at every turn. And so we have been trained, bullied into being afraid of stating what we really believe. Because the left, the out-of-the-closet Satanists, have said your beliefs are evil. And your beliefs don't belong in the public square. So if a Christian says, hey, I'm anti-same-sex marriage, I think it's a sin. I think it's an abomination. They're demonized as evil and wicked. And so people don't stand on that nearly as firmly as they should. And if you stand out there and say, hey, look, abortion is murder, And I don't think we should do that. You're demonized as denying women the health care that they deserve. If you stand on biblical values and do biblical things, you face assassination. And I say that because let's take Donald Trump, who is not a great representation of Christianity, but he has executed some things that are very pleasing to Christians. And I'll point to the federal banning of abortion and sending that back to the states, the overturning of Roe v. Wade. That's like, wow, this man stood out there and did exactly what he said he was going to do. He was going to appoint Supreme Court justices that would overturn Roe v. Wade. And as a Christian, I was pleased. Should we go further? Absolutely. But I think Donald Trump is the only one who had the balls and the courage to do that. But there are many of us, consider themselves conservatives, consider themselves Republicans. They've never liked Donald Trump. And they've never fully gotten on board with Donald Trump. And they want the Donald Trump way to go away. That blunt honesty, that fearlessness, they want it to go away. And they want Trump to go away. Maybe not to the level that leftists do, because leftists, in my view, tried to assassinate Donald Trump. They tried to incarcerate Donald Trump. But part of the reason why, in my view, they've so wantonly and publicly tried to assassinate and tried to incarcerate Donald Trump is because they knew a major segment of his support doesn't really support him. They've supported him with gritted teeth. They're never Trumpers. Or, and I'm not trying to offend people that are friends of mine that I support, but they're Ron DeSantis supporters. And they've dealt with Donald Trump with gritted teeth, and they wish he would go away, and they wish that, we should have ran Ron DeSantis in 24. The support for Trump, because we know the price, the kind of boldness, the political incorrectness, the kind of things that Donald Trump has done his whole life, and that go all the way back to the Central Park Five, when he called those guys out for being the nasty, violent criminals that they were. Not one of the Central Park Five, and we're going back to the 1980s, but not one of the Central Park Five, none of them were innocent. Anybody that's looked at the facts of that case, they didn't rape that woman, but they participated in the rape of that woman. They were part of the rape of that woman. And they admitted this on tape with their parents sitting next to them, with the police recording them. Anybody that's looked at the true facts. But Donald Trump has been that kind of bold, where he stood his ground and dealt with the facts of the deal, and he's dealt with the consequences. And that whole Central Park Five deal, they started calling him a racist. And when he ran for president, they really drummed it back up. And, he's a racist and he hates women. And look at this tape of Donald Trump where he said, grab him by the crotch and all this other stuff. And most people don't want to deal with what Donald Trump has had to deal with as a bold, unapologetic, America First leader. They will, the system, the media system, will frame you up as the most dangerous person in America if you stand on biblical truth, if you execute things that are consistent with a biblical worldview. And everybody knows what the consequences are for that now. Because they tried to assassinate Trump twice. They've tried to incarcerate him and put him in prison over bogus things. Everybody knows the consequence. Even Donald Trump knows it, and that's why he has toned it down. And then if you didn't get the message with Trump, they sent the message again with Charlie Kirk. Charlie Kirk was a young man that ran around speaking biblical truth. And at the end, he started speaking the really uncomfortable biblical truths that put you in the crosshairs. And people don't want to talk about this, but it's obvious. And so the left, Mamdani and the group, they get to talk about exactly what they believe. Everybody on the right couches and tries to say it politically correct because they don't want to be framed up the way Tucker Carlson is being framed up right now. They don't want pieces written in the Daily Mail calling you the most dangerous person in America and someone who needs to be neutralized like a fox in a hen house. Everybody knows exactly what's going on. And if this were happening on the left, this were happening to leftists, all leftists would talk about it boldly. Like, man, Charlie Kirk stood on biblical values and started questioning things and he and Megyn Kelly did a podcast where they like, hey man, I'm getting blowback from Israel and the Jewish crowd, and they're calling me an anti-Semite, and I've been nothing but a friend to them. I'm just trying to ask questions or draw a little line to where we don't have to be slaves to Israel. If we can be critical of America, we can be critical of Israel. And look, I understand what I'm saying as I try to unpack some nuance here. There's a consequence for it. People right now are running to their laptops or their cell phones. Whitlock's anti-Semitic. He's anti-Semitic. He just said that, he just said Israel killed Charlie Kirk. And I did not say that. But everybody knows the consequences of even going anywhere near talking about what Charlie Kirk, what Donald Trump, what Tucker Carlson is facing. That there are certain things we are not supposed to talk about. And so if you're sitting here wondering why Mamdani is the mayor of New York this morning, or has been elected this morning, he gets to say whatever he believes. He gets to come off as authentic. He gets to describe in detail, if I'm the mayor, here's what I want to do. Here's how I want your lives to change. Here are the things that I think will improve New York City. But if you're on the conservative side, if you're on the biblical conservative side, they have framed up the conversation that if you say what you think should happen, you're racist. If you say, man, we got too many Muslims over here. Man, how did 80,000 people from Somalia end up in Minnesota? How did Ilhan Omar rise to power? Why are there people in lawmakers of ours that have dual citizenship? How come we can't execute an America First agenda? If you ask those questions, you're intolerant. You're racist. You're anti-Semitic. And most of these people don't want to deal with the consequences. And the only people that can are people that look up and look to Jesus for guidance. Charlie Kirk did that. And when I say they, whatever forces that killed Charlie Kirk, I think they killed him over his biblical worldview and his fearlessness about speaking that biblical worldview. He was unafraid. He went head on. Someone called him racist, he would engage with them and explain to them why he wasn't racist and what his thinking was. But he was framed up as this evil character. And look, me and Charlie Kirk were not best friends. Me and Charlie Kirk didn't talk that much. But the Charlie Kirk that I met and the Charlie Kirk that I followed and the TPUSA events that I attended, this was not a force of evil. This is a force of good. This was a man standing on biblical values, trying to bring people together through Christ. He was looking up. Everybody has been told to look down. And that when you start looking down and you don't look up, and when you start being afraid of expressing your biblical worldview, everybody can see the inauthenticity. Everybody, the people that you want to inspire to vote for you, they don't really believe in you. They think they believe in the uniparty. And so they will come out and vote for Donald Trump because he's done enough, he's experienced enough, he's been the assassination attempts, the incarceration attempts, the deliverables. And in my lifetime, the only president that I can positively say, man, this guy in my lifetime delivered something of value to me, it's Donald Trump. And it's the overturning of Roe v. Wade. And it's the pardons, the presidential pardons he gave the January 6th crowd. And it's the legalization of a conversation about how rigged the media and how fake the media is. And he basically created this independent media space that I operate in and has given me an opportunity to stay true to what I actually believe, rather than having to sit on corporate television and compromise what I actually believe. Donald Trump participated in creating an environment and a culture and a workforce that where I can be me. And I'm thankful for that. And so that's, again, I had never voted. And I voted for Donald Trump because I thought, man, not the kind of Christian I would want from my president, but at least he stands for something and delivers something of real value. And we don't have politicians that do that anymore. And you wonder why people aren't coming out in droves to vote. We're supposed to come out in droves and vote for Andrew Cuomo? This man's a Democrat. He as far as I could, to me, and I'm sorry for saying this, but it's what I think. Any of these Democrats, I don't think they're on board with God. And they may have fooled themselves into thinking they are, but they're not. Anytime your national convention has an abortion truck sitting outside the front door, you're not on Team God. And you can lie to yourself and you can convince yourself that you are, but you're not. But they've turned conservatives into being soft versions of Democrats. And you can't, we're just too inauthentic. And so you wonder why Candace Owens and Nick Fuentes have followings. It's because people believe that they believe what they're saying. Doesn't make what they're saying right. It just makes people believe, like, hey man, they really believe that. And they don't think that mainstream Republicans and their supporters, the Never Trump crowd, the I'd prefer DeSantis crowd, they don't believe you're authentic. And so they don't really care about coming out and supporting you. You're just a different path to the exact same results. I thought Steve Dace wrote something brilliant. It's long. I'm going to share it. I'm going to read it. It's long. I don't like the ending of it, but when I was sitting here this morning thinking about everything that I thought about what this election result, particularly in New York and with Mamdani, what it means, what it signifies. We had the conference call this morning at 6 a.m. I'm talking about it then. I'm thinking about it even further. And then about an hour before this show started, I read what Steve Dace tweeted out this morning. And I was like, this is tremendous. This is brilliant. Let me read it. Last night's election results proved again that worldview is destiny. 3 lessons we have to learn. Let me stop here. Worldview is destiny. Biblical worldview. I'm putting words in his mouth or putting words in his tweet, but biblical worldview is destiny. And the left, and I'm putting words in his mouth, this is me interpreting what he's saying, but the left gets to proudly, boldly speak their worldview. The right has been trained that if you speak your worldview too boldly, we'll do you the same way we did Trump. Here's Donald Trump. He's friends with every black rapper and celebrity and athlete for years. But we framed him up as a racist. And we'll do that to you. Here's Charlie Kirk, a devout Christian. We framed him up as racist. We can do it to you. And there's been bullets fired at Donald Trump. There's been attempts to incarcerate the man. And Charlie Kirk was shot in broad daylight in front of basically all of America and all the world. And most people don't want to pay that price. They want to carry the cross only so far. When it gets dicey and when it gets to like, man, you could lose your life, you could lose your reputation, you could become a pariah. Most people put the cross down and say, I'm good, this is as far as I can go. The left, they have no limits. They will carry their worldview to the extreme. We want satanic cross-dressing men in drag reading to your kids, dancing and shaking their penises in front of your kids. We want to cut the breast off your baby girls. We want to cut the penis off your baby boys. They will take it to the extreme. They're authentic. They're not embarrassed by their worldview. We're afraid of ours. And all the people say, not me, yes, you too. Let me continue with Steve Dace. Suburban voters reign in Virginia. The GOP used to be the suburban party before Trump, but in this 3 presidential elections, we were +2, -10, -4 nationwide with suburban voters as the GOP becomes more of a rural, non-college educated party. Republicans won Virginia in 10 straight presidential elections from 1968 to 2004. They have not won it since for 3 reasons. First, the massive influx of government workers to the state since Obama, which is unique to the area. But the next 2 are not. A generation of soft-headed preaching by suburban megachurches, along with an all-out Marxist indoctrination in our colleges and universities, has helped move the populations of these areas nationally, culturally left. Without a strong economic message record to counter that, we don't have either right now. We are doomed in the suburbs. We're just arguing the margins. Key sentence here with Steve, and I just love that he's just nailed it. Let me see. Soft-headed preaching by suburban megachurches. the suburban megachurches are no different than the inner city black churches. They're unwilling to stand on biblical truth. They're unwilling to do the hard part. They're unwilling to accept that the Word and Jesus did not come to make everybody feel warm and fuzzy. He came with a sword. He came to divide the believers from the non-believers. And many people claiming to be believers who clearly don't have the courage to stand up for their beliefs. He came to point that out. And so while all of you all run around seeking unity, God has told us to come out from among them. And it's actually a good thing to be reviled by them. Let me continue with Steve Deace. The Democrat Party has been completely made over into the image of its ideals. These Marxist, demonic, Islamist, but I repeat myself, ideals are no longer mere social media or cable news talking points to be memed or mocked on our side. They are the serious and true creeds we must defeat of the Democrat Party. Which has whole hog embraced Mamdani. He is their next Obama archetype. He is their base. It's not the electrical worker union guy anymore. Every one of their national standard bearers for the foreseeable future will openly and brazenly represent and run on anti-American ideals with no spoonfuls of euphemisms to make the poison go down. 100 proof shots with no chasers. These are no longer mere rival political campaigns, but rival evangelistic missions. We're in a spiritual war, if I would condense what Steve has said. And the spirit, the demonic spirit, the bold demonic spirit is kicking the butt of lukewarm Christians. And basically, this whole thing, he said, it's a lukewarmness. Nobody wants to do the hard part. No one wants to suffer the consequences of standing on the entire Bible, but particularly the New Testament. People, the consequences are too great. Hey, they kill people. They put people in jail. And people don't want to suffer. And Christianity requires suffering. And most of us don't. Let me continue. Elections will therefore now become worldview steel cage matches. He's nailing it. He's nailing it. I want to repeat that. Elections will therefore now become worldview steel cage matches. We are not going to significantly win outside our native bases of strength without the ability to boldly and clearly articulate the worldview differences between the two sides, because without that, our MAGA-MAHA coalition doesn't show up in the numbers we need. In fact, without these kinds of candidates, we can now even lose statewide within our native bases of strength, where the rural areas are not inspired, and we lose urban, suburban so bad we cannot overcome. We have dim governors in Kansas and Kentucky already, and I could see this happening in Iowa next year. No one gives a rip about the GOP as a brand. Bingo. But then to win swing voters, we're going to have to come up with some bolder, more effective economic messages and interventions. Besides, we will manage Obamacare and deficit spending better, which seems to be our current one. For example, even our economic messaging must convene a different, better way of life than better widgets and payouts. Everything we are about now, even economically, has to speak to the soul. The Democrats have become so craven and humanistic, we cannot defeat them on those/their terms. Everything we are about now, even economically, has to speak to the soul. Tucker Carlson is trying to speak to the soul of Christians. And he's been framed up as the most dangerous man in America. And people believe that because, he interviewed Nick Fuentes and he wasn't hard enough on him. We must reject Tucker Carlson. And so when you reject Tucker Carlson, it's a message to your voting base. Hey, we will reject you too. Now here's Tucker Carlson, been standing out here 10 toes down on Fox News and everywhere, fighting for us. We done watched this man go through a spiritual journey. And we've watched him do it transparently. We watched it in real time. And now we want to cancel Tucker Carlson or define him as the enemy because he has questions about our relationship with Israel. He has questions about a Christian nation's relationship with a country whose religion rejects the divinity of Jesus Christ. Think it through. The man has bent over backwards. I watched him yesterday with Dave Smith. Bent over backwards, explaining in detail. I don't have a problem with Jews. I question the Israeli government. And if I can question the American government, I damn sure should be able to question a foreign country's government and their leaders. And you wonder why people are staying home? You wonder why they look at you and say, man, you're full of doo-doo. You don't have the balls for this. And they do. They're playing for keeps. They kill, they rob and loot, they burn down cities. And I'm a socialist, Marxist, Muslim. I want to be mayor. 10 toes down. I want to defund the police. They express a real vision of what they want to happen. And then they dare those of us that are Christians, those of us that are America first, to stand 10 toes down and say what we want. And what we want is respect for Jesus Christ and the values expressed in the Bible. And we want to reinstill those values in America. We don't want abortion on demand. We don't want a special set of rules set up to favor certain groups and demographics. We want a meritocracy. Some of us that were blinded by our racial idolatry have figured out that, like, hey man, we put around these set-asides for blacks. Well, the next thing you know, we're gonna put set-asides away for gays. And then the next thing you know, we're going to put them set-asides for women. And the next thing you know, we don't have a patriarchal culture. We have a matriarchal culture that's a slave to racial idolatry, that's a slave to the alphabet mafia. And so, as boldly as I'm talking right now, if you want to inspire people to come out and vote, you have to be willing to stay, you know what? These gays, they done gone too far. This same-sex marriage is a slippery slope. Can't you see the ramifications from it? This racial idolatry, this set-aside program for blacks. Now, they're going to have to earn it. They're going to have to lift themselves up by their bootstraps. They're going to have to get re-engaged with the institution of marriage if they want to make it in this country. And if they don't get on board with these biblical values, we're going to lock them up for committing the crimes that they commit because they haven't parented their children. And we're not giving away jobs to them that they're not qualified for. Because you know what? I believe in God, and I believe they can do anything anybody else on this planet can do. Because that's what the Word of God tells me. I'm not creating crutches for people that God didn't intend to walk on crutches. You got to let the chips fall where they may. And yes, you will be, Jason Whitlock's an Uncle Tom and a sellout. How dare he not want to give black people crutches? I laugh it off. But there's a Marxist, socialist, communist, Muslim running America's front porch. And if you, we're just going to contain it. Just don't go to New York. And 10 years from now, we'll have 20 other cities where just don't go there. We're not electing the people you want elected because they're not bold enough to speak to people in a way that inspires them to vote. And the Democrats are. And so the takeaway from all of this is like, well, without Trump, well, are you willing to do what Trump was willing to do? Because Trump's time is over. He can't be president again. He's not going to be at the top of the ballot again. And he's gone through enough. The assassination attempts, the lawfare. Someone else, others have to pick up the baton. And I'm just sorry, the Never Trump crowd and the, hey, I prefer DeSantis crowd, they're going to make it impossible for anybody else to want to pick up Trump's baton. Because all these gritted teeth Trump supporters, now that the Trump deal is over, now they're trying to position for, we got to end the whole Trump deal. This has been 12 years of hell. We need politics as usual. It reminds me of The Godfather. I think it was Godfather 2, where Michael Corleone had to tell Tom Hagen, the adopted son of the Corleone family, or maybe it was Godfather 1, I can't remember. But it's like, hey man, Tom, you're not a wartime consigliere. And we're at war. There's a spiritual war going on. And people that aren't wartime consiglieres have the loudest mouths and are sitting in the consigliere chairs, and they can't do it. They're not built for this level of conflict. And as long as they try to gatekeep and stand in the way, what's going to happen, people like Nick Fuentes are going to get more powerful. Because people are, well, he ain't scared. And you know what? I don't like everything he says, but he says what he thinks. People want authenticity. Authenticity is what drives people to vote. Not that I'm the litmus test, but I'm telling you, I spent my whole life committed to being a non-voter. Donald Trump came off so authentic to me. And I felt like, Man, I owe this man. The man stood there and stared down bullets. The man put Supreme Court justices that ended Roe v. Wade. The man let them January 6 people up out of jail. Got to show this man some appreciation. Who else can I say that about? Marjorie Taylor Greene? She seems to be standing bravely, but we're demonizing Marjorie Taylor Greene. And again, the people that are running around talking about canceling Tucker Carlson. I'm supposed to have confidence in them and in that brand of politics? No dice. No dice. And this isn't just, don't write this off. Man, Whitlock just likes Tucker because Tucker had him on his Fox News show. And that's not it. I watched this man's worldview be transformed by the word of God. And I've watched the man sacrifice that job that he had on Fox News and put himself in physical danger. Because again, you can say, oh, he's making more money now than he ever was, and he's rich already. He's put himself in physical danger, his family in physical danger. They killed Charlie Kirk. You think they wouldn't like to kill Tucker Carlson? Let me, oh man, I didn't realize I was going this long. I apologize, but I'm fired up. Because I haven't even played, I want this communist Muslim that they put in charge. I haven't even played any. Let's play SOT 1.
If
Mamdani.
anyone can show a nation betrayed by Donald Trump how to defeat him, it is the city that gave rise to him. And if there is any way to terrify a despot, it is by dismantling the very conditions that allowed him to accumulate power. This is not only how we stop Trump, it's how we stop the next one. So Donald Trump, since I know you're watching.
Did you, so for someone like me, the man just said how we stop the next Donald Trump. And you just heard me say, like, stop the man that ended Roe v. Wade? Really? No, I don't want to stop. Because the next person up may overturn same-sex marriage. And I want more of that. And he's saying we want none of that. Is what he's saying. See, this man is unafraid to be authentic to his worldview. We keep trying to water down our worldview. We keep trying, instead of, and people are going to, well, I don't care if they misunderstand what I say. But I think I heard Tucker yesterday with Dave Smith talk about Paul, St. Paul, and how St. Paul used to run around murdering Christians and then became one of the most important men in the history of Christianity. And so when you truly have a biblical worldview, and you truly understand the power of God's word, you don't fear anybody. You're not running around trying to cancel any and everybody. You're actually trying to get them into a deeper understanding of the word of God. And so the destruction of Candace Owens or Nick Fuentes, not my mission. I want them to be transformed by the word of God. And as long as they keep expressing an interest in the word of Jesus Christ, we should express an interest in giving them a deeper understanding of Jesus Christ and the word of Jesus Christ. He's a false prophet. He's just pretending. Well, Mamdani, he's not pretending. He doesn't care about Jesus Christ. There are people that hate Jesus Christ, mock Jesus Christ. We don't give up on them. But people that quote the Bible, talk about Jesus Christ, we got to give up on them. It's illogical. It's just illogical. Donald Trump was a hardcore leftist. And best president of my lifetime, because, Barack Obama, he was the first black president. And you know what he gave us? Same-sex marriage. Thank you, Barack. Bill Clinton, they call him the first real black president. It's a joke. They're giving you symbols. They're giving you fake BS. But literally, when you think of, what is he giving you? What was Bill Clinton's legacy? What do you say? Oh, man, Bill Clinton did this or that really supported my worldview. Obamacare, no one's satisfied with that. No one pays attention to that. There's no value in that. You're lying to yourself. Bill Clinton, Barack Obama, George Bush, both Bushes, Ronald Reagan. They give you feelings. Hey, I felt this way about the country then and that. I may be going a little too far with Reagan. I was young then. But Trump gave me something tangible, something that I wanted. Roe v. Wade overturned, and I wanted January 6 people out of prison. And I wanted a media environment, an industry where I could be myself, stand on this biblical truth, say what I believe without fear of being destroyed by a system. Maybe some of you are holding iPhones you got thanks to Obama, and that's all you wanted. Maybe some of you are glad that, what's his name, Lyndon B. Johnson, gave you welfare and the Great Society and ran the man out of your home, and now you get to be free and independent, and the whole world is rigged for women to ascend to positions of authority that they're incapable of executing properly. I get it. It all depends on what your priorities are. Those of us that are Christians, we should concern ourselves with what God wants and quit concerning ourselves with what we want. Because what we want is bad. It's no good for us. I'd like for a president this is me talking, not the person that's surrendered to Jesus Christ, but Jason Whitlock. I want a president that would give me some 32-year-old woman with big tits and, weighs about 125 pounds. That's what I want. Doesn't serve me, doesn't serve America, it's idiocy. And if you were real with yourself, the things you want are idiocy. And so then you need to look in this Bible and let that define for you what you want and what's good for you. If it's good for God, I'm going to trust God and it'll be good for me. I want to play some more Mamdani, and I apologize. I just got to get through this, and then we'll bring Anthony and Virgil and these guys into the conversation. Let's play SOT number 2 from Zohran.
Thank you to those so often forgotten by the politics of our city who made this movement their own. I speak of Yemeni bodega owners and Mexican abuelas, Senegalese taxi drivers and Uzbek nurses, Trinidadian line cooks and Ethiopian aunties. Yes, aunties. To every New Yorker in Kensington and Midwood and Hunts Point.
Is that what Singalese? Who are they? Does that make you happy? Is that what your ancestors died for? Again, maybe the Singalese, maybe they're some of the greatest Christians in the world, and I just don't know. But they need to go do it in Senegal. Let me summarize this. The problem. You can't speak like a true American, like an America First person. You can't do it as a Republican. They will frame you as a racist and someone that's worthy of death. Hitler. And so we don't do it. And voters stay home because they don't believe any of you have any real interest in supporting true Americans and the values that this country was founded upon. And you can run around and it's Candace Owens' fault. It's Nick Fuentes' fault. No, it's our fault. There would be no room for Nick Fuentes if we stood 10 toes down and said, hey man, this is what is best for America. This is what's best for Jesus Christ. This is what's best to adhere to the founding principles in this country. And I don't care whether you call me a racist. The whole Charlottesville scam, there's good people on both sides. And now you got to pretend like, yeah, tearing down the Robert E. Lee statue is a good thing. I ain't got to pretend all that. I don't care. Robert E. Lee's statue wasn't doing a damn thing to nobody. If Southern people want to defend Robert E. Lee, I don't care. Robert E. Lee was an American citizen. And got in a dispute, was on the wrong side of that dispute, in my opinion. But if your ancestors are linked to Robert E. Lee, you ain't got to disavow them. It's just like you'll never find me disavowing my father, and he had thoughts that I completely disagreed with. Let me stop here and not be. I got to be fair to my guest and let Virgil and Anthony and Shemeka in this conversation. Are these guys ready? I don't even want to take a break. Folks, I'm sorry that it took me this long. I don't even know if I got a good question. Anthony, fire first. I don't even have a question. Just the significance of last night's election results and that we have a socialist, Muslim, Marxist person that's in charge of America's largest city. What should we think of that?
It's an indictment, as you've pointed out. It's an indictment on what we've been spending our time doing as Christians, what our focus has been on. We've spent a lot of time fighting and discussing about things that ultimately did not contribute to anything that mattered, right? And so, as you've been pointing out, there is a crowd that speaks exactly what they desire, and they stand on it unashamedly, unapologetically. And sometimes, as Christians, in the trying to accommodate, trying to be kind, gentle, we compromise our faith. And when you compromise your faith, this is the kind of stuff that you get. I remember during the COVID season, I kept telling people and warning people that there was an agenda being built while we were in our homes and while we were in our spaces. There was a whole agenda being built, and they are executing it to the T. But what we did in the same time was got afraid and hid in the cave. So now we're facing the consequence. I'll say one other thing before they get in as well. When you talk about Paul, Paul spent his time talking about what mattered. When he wrote to the church at Corinth, he said, I determined to know nothing except Christ and him crucified. There was little time to get in any side debates about, trivial matters. Does this have anything to do about Christ and him crucified? If not, I don't have the time for it. When the Jews and the Gentiles were still rehashing their past history, Paul in Ephesians lets them know, hey, this was God's plan that we be one in Christ from the get-go. So I don't have time to rehash all that information. Let's stick to what matters. So you've given a good gut check to the Christians to say, hey, are we really about the life that Jesus talks about, the life that says, take up your cross, deny yourself, and follow me? Are you really about that life, or are you really just about appeasing those who you like?
Virgil, before I have you hop in, Anthony's reminded me of something that I did not say clearly enough that I wanted to say. And so let's take the Charlie Kirk Memorial and why it was so powerful. It's a good segue into you, Virgil, because you were there. We saw politicians speak from a biblical worldview and perspective, and it moved people. I was like, oh, wow, we need more of this. And we need it on a daily basis from our leaders. They're afraid to do that. And so part of what I'm saying as it relates to Nick Fuentes and Candace Owens is people can complain about them. And I believe that the complaints, particularly as it relates to Nick Fuentes, are legitimate. But what I will say is this man litters his conversation with scripture. Does it, in my view, erroneously and in a heretical way. But if you're trying to understand why his message is cutting through, is he layers it in scripture. Candace Owens does the same thing. These people in the political space, they had this one moment with Charlie Kirk, and people loved it. But when you go look in New York, when you go look in Virginia, when you go look at these election results, are our politicians on a regular basis lacing their speeches with a biblical worldview and perspective? Are they leaning into God's word? And they're not. And that's why it's not connecting. And so if the left, if you believe like I do and others, if the left is boldly standing on Satan's word, Satan's perspective, there's only one solution: Jesus' word. You have to fire Jesus back at them. And we're not doing that. And then we're upset with the people that are doing it because they're not doing it the way that they should or blah, blah. But okay, then you do it. And you demand that these politicians do it. Instead of Ben Shapiro and Nick Fuentes debating, maybe J.D. Vance and Nick Fuentes should debate, or whatever. But it's the reluctance to lean into Jesus is why these politicians, why I don't believe in politics, because you can get leftists who are supporting Satan, and you can get Republicans who are afraid to fight Satan. Let's say that. Virgil, your thoughts?
A lot of thoughts regarding what you shared. I think I'll start with the fact that when we have any election, every time we engage in an election cycle, it is an opportunity for self-reflection. It is an opportunity to do a self-examination, because what we get to witness is where people are from a standpoint of biblical worldview, where people are in their understanding of how God's order of things. And what we witnessed in New York was that that's totally out of line. I think you're exactly right in that. We need to step into more boldness about our proclamation of truth. But there are a lot of factors that happened in New York that caused what took place to happen. You've got an 8-to-1 population of Democrats to Republican voters. You've got a large swath of the people who are voting in that I almost said in that country, and that Freudian slip was actually right, because the New York is almost a different country when you consider the more than 800 languages that are spoken in the country, in the state, and the fact that fewer and fewer people are actually born in America. These are a large majority of them are foreign born. But I go back to exactly what you stated. We have got to be more bold in our proclamation of truth. We have got to be more clear in our understanding of what God's word says, and be able to declare it. You mentioned the rallying point that was Charlie Kirk's memorial. We need to get back to that. I don't know that would have had impact on the people of New York to any great degree over this short period of time. But I do think it's incumbent upon us. I think the comparator is striking. You're comparing the boldness of a Mamdani to say the kinds of things that need to be said with the boldness that we need to have in our conversation. And I completely agree with that. We need to get rid of the ideas that pluralism is a good thing as it relates to religion and religious practice. I think we need to get rid of the idea that people need to believe what they want to believe and are able to engage in political office. We've got to ask some real questions about what we're doing as a nation. Otherwise, I think we're going to wake up and likely see ourselves in the same situation that we witness across the seas, across the pond, as they say, in Europe.
Shemeka, hop in here.
Jason, I think we've been asleep at the wheel. To hear Virgil say how many people don't speak English in New York, it's just frustrating. And I think that we've been asleep for a long time. When I see what has happened, I think about the reason that I even vote right to start with. When I remember, like, I've always been unaffiliated, but I voted Democrat. And I remember during Obama's second term when I just felt like everything was not lining up with my values. I saw them pushing the LGBTQ agenda. I saw them talking about whether or not children should be able to identify with however they feel. It was just a lot of things that I didn't agree with. And I saw that it didn't seem like men were in charge and that we were just going down this slippery slope. So when I heard Trump, one of the things that attracted me to him was he presented very masculine. So I started to look at the right and look at the conservatives. And for me, it felt like this was where the men were. This was where the real men were, who weren't afraid, who was going to stand 10 toes down, say what needed to be said, and save the country. Well, looking at this election, I'm a bit frustrated with the right because, as you've stated, the left, they're very bold in what they believe. The right, we aren't. I'm trying to figure out how any Christian or who calls themselves Christian would even give space to people who don't call themselves Christians. You open yourselves up to Jews who say Christ is not the Savior. You open yourselves up to Muslims. You open yourselves up to anybody who don't believe as you do. but then are surprised that we're here. I don't understand. I want the people that will speak what needs to be spoken, which is for me. I'm looking at Nick Fuentes and people are saying, he's so horrible, but he is fearless and he's saying what needs to be said when a lot of Christians are not saying that. I want the Christians that will go in and flip over the tables of the money changers. Like, I don't want the weak Christians. It seems that people have forgotten that we're supposed to be wise as serpents and harmless as doves, and just want to be harmless. Well, where are the ones who will flip over the tables of the money changers? That's the side I want to be on. That's the people that I want to get behind, because I don't want us to. I see us falling as a country when you have men in charge like Mamdani, who just believe anything. They feel like, let's just open it up to everybody. I heard anti-American from the first time I ever heard him open his mouth, and so many people were quiet on that. Um, I heard anti-God. So many people were quiet on that, and it frustrates me.
There's a lukewarmness that is destroying America and destroying Christians. And we're just not in a time where we can afford to be lukewarm. And you know, I Nick Fuentes promotes a tribalism that I think is unhealthy, and I think is antithetical to the Word and to Jesus Christ. But I think we have a better shot of taking the scales off his eyes than we do working with, negotiating with, compromising with a Marxist, Islamist, socialist, communist mayor, or Elon Omar, I believe, is in the Senate. Again, good luck trying to get her on board with a Christian worldview, an American worldview. And so I get it. I get why people are afraid. If you go anywhere near saying the things that I'm saying, you're going to be framed as an anti-Semite, a nut job, a racist. Jason Whitlock just loves Nick Fuentes and wants a racist master. I mean, it's insane what they're saying, but they're saying it. And Shemeka, I will ask you this point because it's my belief, and I know I didn't prepare you for this question, but it's my belief that, like, Trump is not the 2016, 17, 18, 19, 20 Donald Trump. That he is Trump past on post to assassination attempts, post a bunch of attempts to incarcerate him. And that's not a criticism. That's just like, hey, the man has done all he can do, and he's a shot fighter at this point. Muhammad Ali became a shot fighter. They all become shot fighters at some point. And they have made the consequences so clear for the next Trump that I think that's why people are afraid to be the next Trump. And to me, the next Trump is this Trump has paved the way for a biblical Trump. Because I don't believe this Trump is biblical. I believe he was a non-believer that God just used to take the scales off our eyes. But am I right in thinking that this ain't the 2016 Trump? This is a Trump that's been beaten up and is a shot fighter, and I love him to death. He'll always be, best president of my lifetime, but he ain't it right now.
It's funny you say that, Jason, because I was saying that to myself earlier today. Like, he used to be very fiery to me when he first took office and when he was campaigning in 2015, going into the 2016 election. Now he just strikes me as like an old fuddy-duddy, like he's tired, like he is one of these tired politicians that we've been seeing for decades. That was one of the things that I loved about him, was that he was so fiery and he felt different. Now he doesn't feel different to me. He feels like a politician to me now. And just the fact that he's been focusing on Israel so much and just kind of this whole peace movement, it's like, where's the fiery man that needs, that we had back in 2015 and 2016? What happened to him? That's the Trump I want to see, who I really felt like was America first. I don't feel that way anymore.
Hold on. Are we hearing Pastor Brooks? Or got you. Virgil, I need you to hop back in here. I got a little bit distracted and lost a little bit of what Shemeka was saying at the end.
Yeah, no, I want to go back to something you guys said. You were talking earlier about Fuentes and others, seeing them as fearless. I don't necessarily see Fuentes and those guys as fearless as much as opportunists. And the opportunity that they're taking on is the vacuum that has been left by pastors at churches who should have been saying things that they haven't been saying for a long time. And so every time you have a vacuum like that, a void like that, someone steps in, some rabble rouser, some chest beater, some viral person who looks to make a platform or create a platform for themselves. And Nick has done a fantastic job of doing that. I don't say that with any glee or excitement. In fact, it's sadness to me, because truth tellers like pastors should be in that space, having the largest impact on men between the ages of 18 and 25. And right now, that's not happening. Fathers should be the ones stepping into that space, having the largest impact on young people. And that's not happening. Too many men have abandoned homes. Too many men have abandoned mothers. Too many men have abandoned their children. And that has got to change. We've got to step into those spaces and speak with crystal clarity, with force, with power. That's one of the reasons why Shemeka was saying she loved Trump. Trump was that father figure, that political man, that masculine man who stepped in and said what needed to be said exactly when it needed to be said. And what we're longing for is to hear more of that in more spaces, through more voices, in these social media spaces where we're consuming the vast majority of our content. That's what we need more of. And I know you're going to have Pastor Corey Brooks on. He's representative of that. What he does and the people that he interacts with are representative of that. But we've got to amplify those voices and continue to speak truth in spaces that matter.
Anthony, I'll give you the final thought on this, and I got to get to Pastor Brooks. He's gone. Oh,
yeah,
I'm
he's
sorry.
out.
Hey, we got to take a break and get to Pastor Corey Brooks. Thank you guys so much. We'll come back with Pastor Corey Brooks next. He's toppling American idols. He's toppling Babe Ruth and Barry Bonds and Willie Mays and Mickey Mantle and Joe DiMaggio. Shohei Ohtani is a story about the fall of American sports and really the fall of America. So we'll celebrate it and we'll enjoy it. But those of us of a certain background and a certain age, we'll have mixed feelings about it. And there will be no hate of Shohei Ohtani. But it will not make us feel the way that Tiger Woods and Michael Jordan and Larry Bird and Magic Johnson and Tom Brady, we won't be feeling that. Welcome.
Here we go.
To BYOG, Jason and Jeffrey, bring your own guitar. Craig Campbell, who's our guest today, he's got a bunch of songs, top 10, been around for a long time.
And then I wrote a song called Outskirts of Heaven. On the outskirts of heaven. And it ended up, to date, it's my most consumed song. It was one of those songs that if it got played, it was tested #1 at every station it got played on. But I couldn't get all the stations to play it because of the three main reasons they said was, one, it was too long. It was 4 minutes and 1 second long. It was slow. and it was religious. So they.
There you go.
Three
Now,
strikes and you're out.
now,
I know.
You dream of moving to Nashville and signing the record deal and getting the songs on the radio and all that. And, you never think about dreaming that one day you please get me out of this record deal. But
Been there.
oh gosh,
Been there with you a couple times.
the only people that I have to make sure is happy with all the decisions I make is me and my wife and my kids, and I just got to make sure that they're proud of me.
But I think we're overdosing on Michael Jordan. He's become what I would affectionately call the Black Shadow. And that's a playoff. Remember, there was a TV show called The White Shadow. This fictional basketball player, Ken Reeves, that's coaching a high school basketball team in Los Angeles in the hood. White guy, they call him the White Shadow. Jordan is the Black Shadow that hovers over the NBA like a dark cloud. And he's a constant reminder of how things suck right now. And you really don't need that if you're the NBA. This constant throwback to Jordan in the good old days, and this constant reminder like, man, these athletes today, they're lazy, they don't play as hard. And so they had a conversation last night with Michael Jordan about load management. And that's really the post-game conversation from, decent night of NBA players to play at the start of the season, NBA on NBC. They're doing a nice job. But the highlight is, hey man, how can Jordan remind us that this era sucks in comparison to his era? And they did it again last night. All right, welcome back. Time to be joined by Pastor Corey Brooks, Project Hood. He's doing his walk across America. Pastor Brooks, Corey, what city you in?
I'm in Richmond, Virginia. A lot of history in Richmond, Virginia. Learning a lot about the Civil War and all the. I did not know that this was the capital of the Confederacy. So it's a lot of history. I just walked the slave trail.
Oh, wow. How long have you been there? What events you got going on in Richmond?
So this is our second day in Richmond, and we're going to be here for another day, walking throughout the city, learning about the culture, learning about the history, meeting a lot of wonderful people. We had a CEO, Kane Grau, who walked with us today, who's showing us the city of Richmond, and we're going to start heading toward North Carolina. So, but it's been a great walk. We've covered over 800 miles so far. This is day 66. We raised about $2 million, a little over $2 million, about $2,100,000. So we got a long way to go, 23 more million to go, but it's a good start.
Corey, I got to ask you, are you plugged into the news of the day and the election results from last night, particularly in New York, where Mamdani was elected mayor?
Yeah, it's interesting. When I was in New York, I did a story about New York and how far it has fallen, and it's going to fall even further now that they have elected a socialist as a mayor. They're going to definitely see high taxes. They're going to see businesses running. They're going to experience a lot of the things that we're experiencing in Chicago. Businesses are leaving downtown, and crime is continuing. And unfortunately, our beautiful city of New York is going to experience some tough times. Socialism has not worked and never will work anywhere at any time.
I'm sitting here, in 2021 in 2001, I'm sorry, World Trade Center towers go down, and 24 years later, there's a Muslim socialist mayor of New York. I guess if you live long enough, you'll see it all.
Yeah, it shows you about the decline of where we are in America. That's one of the reasons why I'm doing the walk, is because I want to bring hope and I want to bring purpose back, and I want to bring people back to a reminder of what it means to be an American and what keeping our liberties and our freedoms available to us, how important that is. And I think we have to be reminded. And New York is definitely a reminder of how far things have gotten and how bad things have gotten.
Corey, where are you off to next?
So we're off to, I think it's called Libertyville, Virginia. It's about 25 miles outside of Richmond. and we're going to continue the walk. And then in a couple of weeks, we'll be headed toward North Carolina.
And remind people how they can donate and support you.
Please go to projecthood.org. That's HOOD, projecthood.org. And they can support the walk and find out all the wonderful things that we're doing and what the monies and funds are going to go toward. And they can see the center, 90,000 square feet. That's 80% complete that we're building on the south side of Chicago to change lives.
Corey, thank you so much. Appreciate the update. We'll talk to you next week.
All right. Thank you. I appreciate it.
All right, guys, stay tuned. I'm going to toss to an interview I did yesterday with Danny Kanell. If you remember, we got backed up yesterday, weren't able to get to Danny Kanell. But this is a fascinating interview that starts talking a little bit about Colorado, and then it moves more into discipling young athletes. It's the kind of conversation that Danny and I both enjoyed. I think you will enjoy it. The Danny Kanell interview will be the end of the show. And so after the Kanell interview, we'll see you tomorrow. All right, welcome back. A little 24-hour delay here, but we have Danny Kanell to talk some college football. Danny was able to watch most of my interview yesterday with Matt McChesney as we talked about Deion Sanders and the Colorado Buffaloes. So Danny, will start there. When you lose Matt McChesney, who's a hardcore Deion defender, hardcore Colorado fan, things aren't looking great for Deion Sanders.
No, and that's what happens when you have two of the worst defeats, not only in Deion's tenure, but you can make a case. These are two of the worst losses in Colorado football history. And this is before Deion got there were some rough years, but to look that non-competitive, and even for Deion to be talking about it, like the fight in our team just didn't show up, they didn't look like it. To me, it's pretty clear that the team is thrown in the towel on the coach. And that's whenever I talk about coaching changes, because it's such a hot topic, we're getting so many coaches fired. I always say, don't look at the record, look at the effort, look at the buy-in, look at what the players are doing on the field. And sometimes you'll see a team that might be losing games and it's just, they're putting it all out there for the coach. I'm like, well, just show a little patience. Maybe this thing will take a little bit of time. But then there are other times when you see it's pretty evident that the team has thrown in the towel on the coach, that it just looks like there's significant cultural issues happening not only on game day, but throughout the week of preparation. And it feels that term, lost the locker room. That, I think, is what it feels like in Colorado right now, is that Deion has lost the locker room.
In the conversation I had with Matt and what I was trying to explain a year ago, even 2 years ago, Deion's not laying a proper foundation for long-term success. He's trying to put everything in a microwave through the transfer portal, through the disregard for Colorado's really strong history. I always thought it was going to be problematic when you don't care about the schools fight song, when you want to recruit by telling everybody, hey, come play for me, Deion Sanders, when you make yourself the draw. I think this is inevitable, and I think that, good timing for you guys at Florida State, for you and Deion, because Deion's taking the shine off himself, and I don't think he's going to be the next Bobby Bowden at Florida State anymore.
No, I don't think so either. And if you look at it the way things have unfolded, it's like, thankfully, you avoided a potential disaster, because Florida State was 2-10 last year. And financially, they could not afford to part ways with Mike Norvell. It's one of the reasons Mike Norvell is still the head coach at Florida State right now. The reason that their athletic director said, I want to wait and see how the season plays out, because they just don't have the finances to be able to write a check for $50 million. Last year, I think it was over 60 for Mike Norvell. So that contract, which was very restrictive, might have actually saved Florida State a massive headache and even a potentially worse financial situation if you cut a check for Mike Norvell to go away and then you hire Deion Sanders. Now you're starting to see some of the things come to fruition that you've been talking about, where I thought he could work, and I still think he could, but I think the roller coaster ride is just too much to build a roster the way he has through the transfer portal. And we've seen, it's interesting because Florida State and Colorado are not that dissimilar in the ups and downs they've had. The year that Florida State went undefeated and got left out of the playoffs, it was a lot of transfer portal players. You know, guys like Jared Verse that they discovered through there, but it's not sustainable over time. And then all of a sudden they had the 2-10 season to follow it up. And so like when you hire these mercenaries just to come in to try to win a championship, the minute you fall short of that goal, you find out, all right, why is this player playing here? Is it because he loves Deion? Is it because he loves a program? Is it because he loves football? Or is it because he loves the paycheck that he's been given? And then I think what makes it even a little bit more over the top is the type of player that Deion has attracted is somebody who wants to go there for the YouTube show and wants to go there for the clout and wants to go there for the, you know, the braggadociousness and the cockiness and the vibe there. But man, when you don't back that up and when things start to come off the rails, that's when true character starts to reveal itself. And I think you're seeing that being a real struggle for Deion to try to keep this locker room together.
Matt was pretty critical of the coaching staff. Deion hired his friends. Deion hired people that are inexperienced coaches. And a lot of players think that, hey, I played it, I can coach it. Coaching is so completely foreign to playing, and it's much harder than what most people think. I'm not surprised, and again, I'm a huge Warren Sapp fan. I like Marshall Faulk a lot as well, but I just think coaching perhaps is a bit more difficult than these guys realize.
Oh, 100% agree. And I think they thought they could do it differently. And I think that's how Deion attracted them to Colorado, to go to Boulder was, I'm not going to be one of those coaches that makes you hit the road all off season and go recruiting. I'm not going to have you in here at 6 a.m. till 10 at night. Like, we do things differently. We're going to get the best players. They're going to come to us because of your gold jacket, because of my gold jacket, almost selling a version of, I don't want to say easy because I don't think it's easy what they're trying to do, but it's a heck of a lot easier than these other coaches who are just grinding from the minute they're out of college, because a lot of coaches didn't play, you know, in the NFL. Some of them might have played a little bit. And where do they start? They start as a GA, hustling, getting coffee, drawing up scouting cards. And that's their mindset of this hunger. And they're the first guys in there and the last guys out. And they are constantly recruiting guys. It's one of the reasons I didn't get into coaching is because I wanted to have a family, because I realized the time restraints that are on it, the amount of travel that you have to do in the off season, the volatility of it where you get hired and fired and you could have to move 10 times in 15 years. I mean, go look at Jed Fish and his resume, the head coach at Washington. Go, a lot of these coaches, go pick any coach and just look at the resume and look how many times they've bounced around. And I think Deion said to these guys, hey, you don't have to take that road. Just come in with me and we'll do it differently. But I think one thing is hard work is undefeated. And I think Colorado's getting outworked on the recruiting trail. The portal has worked because they do attract the player because of those gold jackets, but maybe it's the wrong type of player. And then you do have to develop them. So I know Deion was out this offseason because of health issues, but I'd wonder how much time he spent in Boulder the year before when he wasn't having health issues. And I love Marshall Faulk too. I've played a lot of golf with him. Guess where I saw him a lot? I saw him at like 3 different golf tournaments this offseason. I was kind of like, man, this is great. Like, you got a great schedule. He's like, yeah. He's like, this is different. We're allowed to have a life and be able to do some things off the field. And I remember in the back of my mind thinking, I don't know if that's where all these other coaches are. Like, they're out hustling or watching film or coming up with game plans. I mean, these coaches are hyper obsessed and hyper, the work ethic is off the charts where they're breaking down opponents, 12 opponents all off season so that they're ahead of the game in the scouting department. And it's not to say that those guys aren't good coaches. I almost feel like they've never learned how to coach at that level because it is a different animal than even the NFL. So I just think there's been some significant miscalculations, and then you're seeing this combustible mix of all this come together. And I don't know how the players are responding. I mean, it's evident the players are not responding.
Pat Shurmur, the offensive coordinator, is taking a lot of heat. Matt was critical of him and, described the level of chaos going on within the Colorado program. I want to play you this clip that you actually sent me, and I want your response. Is this an indication of the kind of chaos and just not preparedness. Let's play the clip.
Hey, listen, half left off. Half left off, skip left. Skip left. Check. Half left off, skip right. There. Y'all wanna huddle to it? Just run up and line up.
I mean, for anybody that doesn't know what that was, so you can hardly hear it, but you actually, if you just listen to the clean version, like on X, you can find that clip. Pat Shurmur's in the helmet mic, like in the helmet speaker. So he's talking to his quarterback there on the field, which I believe is Martin Luther Staub out there. I think that was him that was trying to get the call at the time. And he's trying to get a play call during a TV timeout. Like, these players are all over on the sideline. That's how you have the access of the camera being right there. And they can't even get the formation called. And you can hear Pat Shurmur. That I don't think is on the quarterback. I think that's on Shurmur trying to make sure he gets the formation right, and then he changes it, and then there's a miscommunication. And the thing that's kind of hilarious about it is that if you read the caption, it says, all this for a QB sneak, which is what they ran out of the timeout. It's like, it's just a perfect picture of how chaotic things are for Colorado right now. And I don't know if it's because they don't have like a very clear structure of who's supposed to be calling what. And if Pat Shurmur's talking to too many voices in his ear, I don't know why it should not be that complicated for a college offense to just be able to make a simple play call of a quarterback sneak. And I think that was one of the first things that kind of concerned me was Pat Shurmur, was my understanding with his NFL background, that he was brought in to help Shedeur develop for an NFL team, right? That's kind of the narrative why they sent Sean Lewis packing, because their offense was pretty good with Sean Lewis. And now that move looks really bad as Sean Lewis is crushing it, might have a bigger, better job with the job he's doing at San Diego State. And so early on this season, you could see the red flags right away when he brings two quarterbacks to Big 12 media days. And whether that was to try to keep Juju Lewis happy because he was the big 5-star recruit, or whether it was to keep both guys happy, he and Caden Salter, because Caden Salter was a quarterback that didn't come cheap in the transfer portal either. And then within 2 or 3 games, you bench all of them and you go to the third stringer who had been there before. It has just been a revolving door. And I always thought Caden Salter was the guy from the get-go, but Caden Salter is not an NFL quarterback who does not have a skill set that Shedeur had. And so I almost feel like Pat Shurmur has been trying to figure out how to call college plays for a kid that fits in college football but doesn't fit in the NFL system that we saw Shedeur running last year. And it's just only added to this complete mess of what's been just a disaster on the offensive side of the ball.
Do you think that we're about to see not just Colorado, but other college teams revert to factory settings as it relates to recruiting high school kids? That maybe the transfer portal creates this chaos and not everybody can handle it, and maybe you're better off developing your own?
Yes. I think there's a couple reasons why you'll see. It won't revert to where Dabo Swinney's the polar opposite, right? He's a guy who has ignored the portal and just kept winning through recruiting, and yet he's not winning. That's why he's under a lot of pressure. There's got to be some balance. Like, you have to develop players through your high school recruiting that come through your program, that you find, that you bring in there, and you develop them throughout. And then there's going to be basically what I think it should become is sort of how it is in NFL with free agency, because that's essentially what it is. You fill needs on your team. Like, if you've got a weakness on the offensive line, you go out and find the best offensive lineman. You don't clear house and fire your whole offensive line and say, we're going to go get 5 new ones or 7 new ones, and we're just going to totally start from scratch because you missed on the last portal class. That is what I think you've seen too many programs, including Colorado, do is, hey, we had that guy in here from the last portal class. He wasn't cutting it. Let's get rid of him. Let's go get a whole entire new mix of guys. The other thing where I think the portal will cool down somewhat is the COVID year really did skewer. It just threw everything off because we've seen players get 6 and 7 years of eligibility. And so there have been some very attractive players that you at least knew their floor, like they were going to be pretty good starters because they had started multiple years, whether it was the group of 5 or the power 4, you had a pretty good beat on what those players were going to be. Now I think you're seeing teams take risk on portal guys based on them being backups, because there's just the good teams with the good players, they're not letting them hit the portal. They're paying them to keep them. So the portal itself has been weakened somewhat because everyone's kind of woken up. I think earlier there was a little bit of a staring contest and a stare down of teams saying, "Oh, really? You want this guy? Well, we're only going to pay him $500,000 because that's what we think he's worth." And they didn't believe that other schools would pay him. So all of a sudden you saw that rash in those couple early portal classes that really hit. Now you're starting to see teams say, "Oh, that guy that you guys are going to pay that much? Well, we like him, so we're going to pay him. We're going to match your offer to keep him." And so the guys that you're willing to part with aren't your best players. And so I think the portal talent has actually been lessened because people are starting to kind of adapt to the system, realize the market values of what's out there. So I don't think there's as much out there available because teams are keeping their better players.
Also, I just think unlimited free agency for 18 to 22-year-olds is just a recipe for disaster. I think about myself as a freshman at Ball State and a sophomore at Ball State. I was an absolute nightmare. I mean, I was a coach's worst nightmare. And the coaches hated me for 2 straight years. And then in my 3rd year, my attitude changed as I matured, grew up, and started taking accountability of just a little bit. And so what would happen in this era now is I would have been run out of the program. And just like, we hate this guy, 18, 19-year-old, he's an asshole, we can't coach him, blah, blah, blah. And they would have never experienced the 2 good years because they would have moved on from me. And I think handing all these kids all this money and then coaches getting frustrated with 18 and 19-year-olds, "Man, we paid you money to be here," and blah, blah, blah. And there's a guy in the portal that I can get. I just, free agency for 18 and 19 and 20-year-olds is a mistake. And you know, I know that it's hard to get the toothpaste back in the bottle, but I wish they could, because the kids don't realize it and the coaches are starting to figure it out. This just doesn't work.
I think you'll start to see multi-year contracts that they're a little bit tighter and more restrictive, where you can't see the annual, like guys playing at 4 schools in 4 years. I think you'll start seeing that slow down a little bit. I was on the opposite side of you. So while I wasn't a headache, I was not. So my sophomore year, I was trying to play baseball and football at Florida State, and I was trying to compete for the starting job, and I was a little bit upset. I felt like I should have been named the starter because I was the backup my freshman year. I'd played a little bit and played pretty good. Well, Mark Richt, my coordinator, and Bobby Bowden, they were like, "No, you got to compete for your job." So I was a little bit irritated by that. You know, I was a 5-star recruit. I was All-American. So I was and I was competing with a guy that was a transfer from like a D3 school. So I was a little bit irritated by that. And so we had these things called mat drills in the morning, which were 5:30 a.m. workouts. I'm sure you did something similar in the off season. And I was playing baseball as well. And one of the mat drills I slept through. And I'll never forget. So they ended at 7. So at like 7:05, we didn't live that far from the training complex where we had to do these mat drills. Mark Richt was at my door, and he was pounding on the door. And he laid into me, cursed me out, was like, "What are you doing? You're wasting this opportunity. Who do you think you are? You can skip this." And I was stunned. I was like, "Oh my gosh." And I was like, I wanted to leave. I wanted to transfer. I was like, "Screw this, man. I'm trying to do all these things. I'm trying to keep my grades up." And I remember I called my dad. I was like, "Man, I was upset." And he's like, "Take a deep breath." He's like, "It'll be okay." He's like, "If you're supposed to be the quarterback, you'll win the job. Like, just compete your heart out. You know, don't make any rash decision." And ultimately, I did. And there were a couple times throughout my career, I got benched during a game against Miami. I threw 3 picks. I played awful. But I was like, "Man, how did they embarrass me by benching me on national television?" And I was upset. Similar conversation with my dad. He was like, "Go out there, finish it. We'll have a conversation after the year." And thankfully, I had good advice in my ear. So I was able to endure some of those hard times. By the way, all of them, I deserved it. I should have been benched. I should have been yelled at. I didn't show up. So like all of it, I deserved it. And looking back on it, it developed some character in me. It developed me some thickness to be able to take, somebody chewing me out when I needed it. But these kids nowadays are getting such bad information from their parents, from their family, from their agents. None of them want to stick it out when they face the slightest bit of adversity, and it drives me nuts. And I think it creates softer players everywhere, because everywhere they go, it's like, oh, this is this guy's third school. What happens when he faces adversity here? Is he going to quit? Is he going to struggle? And it's harder to find than ever the kids who are mentally tough, physically tough enough to handle what it really means to be a really good college football player and eventually an NFL player.
Man, I was so reminiscing on stories, not even involving me. We had a linebacker named Greg Garnica that was 3-time MAC Defensive Player of the Year. His redshirt freshman season, we had a scrimmage where the coach, Rick Minter, Jesse Minter's dad, Rick Minter used to be the head coach of Cincinnati, coached everywhere. But Rick Minter, he wanted to start in a scrimmage 2 different middle linebackers, and Greg Garnica flew off the handle, didn't show up to practice, wanted to quit the team. And the coach, we had to work it out with him. He's a talented player, and they worked it out with him. And he goes on to be a 4-year starter, 3-time MAC Defensive Player of the Year. But I think in this era, he probably would have quit, transferred. Coaches may have gotten frustrated, blah, blah, blah. You just don't – we're not allowing kids to grow up or not even face the consequences of growing up. Just go collect a check someplace else.
And it starts earlier than ever. As the dad of 3 kids, I see this in youth sports, in female. I mean, I have all daughters, but they play soccer, they play volleyball, and you'll actually see parents, if they're not getting enough playing time, do they stick it out and try to get better? No, they find another club or another city or another team to play for. And I read an article probably about 7 or 8 years ago about snowplow parents, who are basically, if you think about what a snowplow does, if you live somewhere cold and there's snow and you want to fight, you want to get behind that snowplow because it clears the path. It makes it nice and easy. And so you have these snowplow parents that take away every obstacle, every big snow. Like it just makes the path easy. The problem is eventually that snowplow is not going to be there, and you're going to have to go through some slush and some slop and fight your way through it. But these kids are not prepared because a lot of it starts at the home.
Where did your dad's instincts to tell, you're a 5-star recruit. Your dad's sitting there thinking this kid could be a professional football player. Where did your dad's instincts kick in? Was he a former athlete? Is it just his religious grounding? What?
I think it was all, I was very blessed. My dad's my best friend to this day. He grew up in Pittsburgh, like son of a steel mill worker, like a tough background. I think his dad was an alcoholic. And then my dad was able to get his way out of there, became a doctor, a very successful orthopedic surgeon who's got a very strong work ethic. He's always been there for me, never missed a game. So he's always been very supportive. And I would say he's probably the biggest encourager that I've ever had, like almost to a fault. Everything was so positive. But he also instilled in me, I think his big fear, he knew that I was going to be perceived as a rich kid, right? So like I went to a private school, small private Christian school. A lot of my friends, when they were 16, got brand new cars. I did not. Like my dad was like, no way, you're not. And he could have afforded it, but he's like, there's no way you're getting a new car. I just don't want people to look at you like that. When I got hurt, now my dad was a doctor, so he was in a great position to evaluate this. He would be like, no, he'd be like, you're fine. Like, go back in the game. Like, you can play your way through this pain. This will hurt a little bit. And there was always a point about being tough and how you kind of had to show people that sort of the Kanell background was a tough background. Even though you had things easy, you have to show people that you are tough and that you're physically tough enough and mentally tough enough to handle it. So I think a lot of it was about him building a mental toughness of being able to go through adversity, because he went through a lot in his childhood and his young adult life, working his way to where he got, that he really tried to instill that in me. And I'm forever grateful that he did instill those values in me. And I find it harder than ever to instill in my daughters, because I still think sometimes my kids are too soft. They have, it's easier than ever to order something on Amazon and have it here. And my kids have nice things and I want to spoil them, but I also try to teach them that same work ethic. And it is challenging. It's not easy to do it. But I think my parents, my mom as well, just did a really good a job of instilling some of those values that are not only necessary in sports, but in life as well. Like they were always. I mean, my dad only called, Mark Richt, because you hear horror stories about parents calling coaches for playing time, complaining about this. And this is sort of the mentality I have with my kids. If I'm not the coach, I'm not complaining about playing time. I don't go to practice. I don't know what's going on in ins and outs. So if my daughter's not good enough to play, I'm fine with it. I'll tell her to work harder, get some extra training, make it hard on them, and do that. The only time my dad ever called Mark Richt about an issue was I got a C, and he was pissed off. And he's like, no. He's like, you think, football, you think you could play, and baseball, you could be a professional athlete? Well, guess what? One day you're not going to be able to. So I want to and academics was always a priority for me over sports, even though we did have a heavy sports background and my parents loved me being an athlete. There was also a heavy emphasis on academics as well.
How do you balance, or what concessions do you make in terms of, you've got 3 daughters, they're athletes. Can you hold them to the same standard, same approach as your dad did with you, or because they're women, do you take a tiny bit of a different approach?
No, I think I've tried to take on the same approach as my dad. There's also a healthy balance where there's more distractions now than ever. Like when I was a kid, there wasn't TikTok, there wasn't social media, and there wasn't something in the palm of your hand that is harder than ever to monitor. Like as a kid, I was probably TV. I was not allowed to watch TV after school when I got home, and it was pretty easy because my parents could be right there and you could see it. So they just make sure I wasn't watching TV. And this is from, 2nd, 3rd grade. This isn't really in high school, because in high school I was practicing every day. So like even from a young age, it was, you're not going to come home and just sit and watch TV for a couple hours. Well, now with phones, it's even harder because kids are sneaky. They'll try to sneak them around. I found a burner phone on one of my daughters so she could go, like, think you can take them away. They're very crafty, but I've tried to, instill some discipline in them, try to instill a work ethic, tried to tell them, hey, if you want nice things, you have to work for them. But it's definitely not easy. But as far as the approach with athletics, I've been pretty blunt with them. If they're not playing, you got to work harder. If you're not happy with your playing time or your recruitment process, you've got to work harder and make yourself into the athlete that you want to be. And it doesn't just come easily. You got to work for it.
And just for the audience I think your daughters play volleyball. Any other sports?
Yeah, so my oldest is she's going to Elon next year. She's going to play volleyball in college at Elon in North Carolina. My middle child is a swimmer. She's actually swimming in the state championships here. She made the states as a junior. And then my youngest is I'm trying, this is another pet peeve of mine. She's a really good athlete. She likes volleyball and soccer. So we're trying to have her do both, but she's getting tugged in both directions because, as with most of these sports, it's not seasonal the way it used to be, where there might be a 4 or 5 month window for baseball, 4 or 5 month window for football, and a 4 or 5 month window for basketball. And you could play all 3, the major sports, without very much, I'd miss a little bit of basketball practice because our football team went to the playoffs, but it wasn't that much. Now you've got all these sports year round traveling across the country. It's a little bit insane. That's probably been the biggest issue for us, is because I wouldn't say I'm thrilled with that. I don't think it's necessary, but I do think it is kind of necessary. If their goals are to play in college, then I think it is kind of necessary to partake in the system that's there, so you do get eyeballs on you, in those sports that they've played. But that's been probably the biggest challenge for us, is trying to keep a sense of normalcy while we're playing sports nonstop around the clock.
Is your wife a former athlete? Where she fit in all this?
So she played soccer at St. Thomas Aquinas in South Florida, which is like the football mecca. It's all, Michael Irvin went there, Chris Everett went there from the tennis side, Brian Piccolo. It is a historically great, institution for athletics and academics. And she won 4 national championships in soccer, straight 4 years through national championships in soccer. She wanted to go to college. She wanted to play, but she was kind of burned out. So she ended up going to Florida State. They were just starting the program. She got a couple offers in the Northeast, but really her sister went to Florida State. And I would say, if I ask my wife now, it's kind of helpful for my daughters, is she says she wished she would have played in college. She wished she would have done it. She kind of regrets it. Her parents were a little bit more lenient. My parents would have been like, no, why don't you prioritize that? Her parents were fine with letting her go and just have a good time at college and enjoy her experience. And I think that's kind of helped her give advice to my daughters if they ever felt like, man, I don't know if I want to do this or not, kind of encourage them that you are different as an athlete. Like, and people view you differently when you have athletic success. And it doesn't even mean you have to win national championships or be a starter at All-American. I think being an athlete helps you in life, in the workforce. I think it sets you apart because they realize what discipline it took and work ethic and all those types of things that I do think make athletes impressive, especially college athletes.
Danny, that's all I got for you today. I really appreciate you making the time. Really enjoyed the conversation. I hope you did as well. When we come back, it'll be more fearless. Next.